Hey everyone, I'm Nato King, and this is a grinding video with Keats' final outfit in the game.
And hello, I'm Sweden.
So, you had a lot of snow up your way?
Uh, yeah, actually, it's just now beginning to melt.
Yeah, my area's pretty melted by now. We got a couple piles of snow left, but not a whole lot. Still, I think we're kind of on the boundary of when this outfit is thematically appropriate.
Alright.
I mean, we're getting into March and still having snow showers sometimes. But we've got a lot of boring grinding to do. Unfortunately, no items involved at all. Just a bunch of folks killing a bunch of other folks. So,
Uh,
like I think I said earlier, I always just run to the fairy realm and kill a whole bunch of Poukes.
uh,
I guess you haven't been keeping up with the videos. You don't know a whole lot about this game.
not really. I've not actually, heard of it until recently, so.
You know, fair enough. Get to see a bunch of these folks in action.
Okay. Uh,
You got Ludiag, Draruku, Habitrot, Answerer. I'll need to kill a bunch of stuff, and then I gotta kill like 10 Kilmulas with Thrumpin. Which is why I ran to this room, where there should be a whole bunch of Kilmulas, but that's if you come here as Ellen. Keats, it's
okay.
just like a dozen Pukas. Still, they're killable. They're things.
Oh, okay, so this is more of an, action game then.
Oh yes, totally.
Okay, well, that's cool.
And there's an underlying mystery to the whole thing, but the actual gameplay portion is all action, fighting, chopping things with giant cleavers.
Yeah, like you told me about the folk system, I didn't really know what to expect as far as gameplay went.
I really love the work that this company does just in general. They've got some games that are very different from almost anything else you ever see.
Yeah, it's got a very unique style about it that I can't really think of anything that I would compare it to.
Yeah, I can only think of one other game, and that's by this company.
Yeah. Um,
So I guess there's not going to be a whole lot of interest to talk about in the video.
yeah.
So the chapter that we're on right now is basically about the modern philosophy of death. I guess I don't want to go into too much detail because when we play as Ellen, we'll be learning more about the game's perspective on that. But essentially, the modern view on death and the fact that people are not believing in the netherworld anymore sort of creates this endless corridor where people never actually get to a destination.
Mm. Uh, so this game has a lot to do with the concept of the afterlife and such then?
Yeah, I mean, this is the netherworld right here. This is the fairy
Okay.
realm, which is a paradise that a lot of people envisioned. Then there's a battlefield world where the people who died in violent ways end up.
Okay.
An undersea world, which I guess they don't really ever explain why people would end up there specifically.
Hmm.
But it's kind of an outdated concept, and that's why it's disappearing, because nobody thinks about it anymore. And then, you know, like I said, the modern, more agnostic or atheistic philosophy is given way to the endless corridor.
Hmm.
I mean, yes, what are your thoughts on the subject?
Um, it's, pretty interesting. I'm wondering if it brings up the difference between, the more older concepts of afterlife, where you generally just die and end up going to a place like the Hades kind of thing, or the more recent religions where you have more of a direct system of punishment and reward for afterlives.
So you mean like one final destination where all the souls end up, as opposed to multiple destinations depending on some aspect or quality of that person's life?
Yeah, essentially.
I think this game tends more towards the multiple realms. You know, again, just because every chapter introduces a new realm and a new batch of souls that have gone to that particular place.
Okay. So, like, I think you're mentioning that, like, how they die determines a lot of where they went, or used to?
Yeah, how they die, and, again, possibly some of the things that they've done in life. I know, I kind of like the Discworld view on it, where wherever you think you're supposed to go, that's where you go.
Yeah, I've seen, other media that kind of takes a similar standpoint on that, like, Sandman is a pretty good example of how that cosmology's afterlife works.
Yeah, I know that's one that I should have read at some point, but I never got around to it.
I like it quite a bit. It's probably one of my favorite works, and I'm a pretty big fan of Neil Gaiman in general. I can't pronounce words.
Yeah, I think his name is pronounced Gaiman, but yeah, I don't know a whole lot of his works. I did read the crossover he did with Terry Pratchett, Good Omens.
Yes, that's really good. It's not very, I guess, typical, since it tends to take on qualities of both of their works, but it's still a great read nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely recognize things like the extended footnotes. That's a very Pratchett thing.
Yeah, I know a little bit about Pratchett's actual work, but I've not had the chance to read anything by him, which does sound like both fun and good reads, so I would like to sometime.
Yeah, I guess we gotta trade. I gotta read some Sandman, and you gotta read some Discworld.
Sounds like a plan.
Alright, when we're done with this video, though, finally found a couple of Kilmulas, started building up Thrumpin. And then I discovered that Habitrot, despite being an earth element, is really, really good against flying enemies. Because he drops his giant weight from the ceiling, and it goes through the path of the enemies that are in the air.
Alright, I was kind of wondering what you meant, since I thought there might have been, like, an elemental system to this. Or there might actually be one, I wouldn't know.
Yeah, there is. Some of the folks have specific attack elements that they use. Keats gets earth, fire, and ice attacks. And certain folks are more vulnerable to certain elements. But in this case, I think in most games you'd think earth attacks wouldn't work at all against flying enemies. And here they're really good. At least if you get the right one. I think the first earth element attack I got also has a nice vertical range, and I was using it against Andrast the first time I fought it. But this is pretty much the only room where any appreciable number of Kilmulas appear. So this is where I'm going to do most of my grinding for Thrumpin.
And so you're grinding to get a new folk, then?
No, I'm just unlocking the abilities of the folks that I already have.
Okay, so Thrumpin is an ability then? Or?
Well, it's an enemy that you fight in the Endless Corridor. And once you've
okay.
fought it, you add it to your arsenal, and you can use it against the other folks. So every attack I'm using is a folk that you fight somewhere.
Okay, I'm sorry. Get this then.
Yep, and all you gotta do is use those folks to fight a bunch of other folks, or capture a whole bunch of them, or use certain items, and they become stronger. So, right now I'm building up Answerer a bit, because I can't kill an Earth Elemental Pori with an Earth Elemental Habitrot attack. And Answerer I've only got a 3-hit combo with right now. Once I kill something like 9 more enemies with it, then I'll have a 4-hit combo. And I can just use continuous /element attacks.
That sounds fun.
Well, that's why the grinding videos are pretty optional in the grand scheme of things. Because I don't think anybody actually wants to watch me spend all the time to grind all these karmas.
Yeah. So I noticed, like, these little spirit shapes appear above their heads when they're being hit sometimes.
Yep.
What exactly are those?
Well, the blue one shows that I'm doing the right type of damage to bring out its id. And then when it turns red, I can capture it. Which I'm not doing right now because I'm actually trying to kill them, and that's what unlocks the karmas.
Alright, that's...
But once you capture one of the folks, that's what lets you use its attack.
So do you assign the attacks to specific buttons then, I'm guessing?
Yep.
Okay.
So I usually have a scheme where I keep a shield of some kind on the X button, some kind of continuous combo attack on the square button, and then, you know, elemental attack of some kind on the circle, and some kind of big attack that does a lot of damage on triangle. Just because that makes it easier to keep track of which button I need to press for any situation.
Yeah, it seems like a good layout or scheme to have.
And then, of course, sometimes you gotta break that scheme, and it takes a while to get used to what any given button's gonna do. I always hate certain quests where they bind certain folks to certain buttons and you can't change them.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like it'd be a problem.
I mean, you can still get everything done that you need to get done. You just have to remember which button does it. And there's my fourth hit for Answerer, so now I've got a continuous attack. I think as soon as I've used the fourth hit, I can start using it again. And I gotta defeat 15 more folks with it. It's one painful thing about the karmas. Every time you unlock one, there's another one to go.
Mm.
That's alright, because there's a room around the corner that's got something like 25, 30 enemies in it, and they're all easy to kill.
So yeah, also reminds me, as Pokemon was mentioned when we were, like, talking about it earlier, but it also kind of reminds me a little bit of Persona, since that's a kind of Pokemon-ish game.
Yeah, I've got a couple of those and haven't gotten around to playing them yet. I mean, I've got the basic idea of it.
Yeah. I think they, 3 especially might be thematically similar to this game, since it has a lot to do with, death and the, inevitability of it, and the big theme of the Persona 3 at least being, like, the phrase Memento Mori. I think that's how you pronounce that.
Yeah, remember death.
Yep.
That was a big thing in Virtue's Last Reward.
Not... Actually, I actually don't have that. I have, I think it was the not prequel, the first game, 999.
Yeah.
Which I played a little bit of that, but I did not, beat it. And then I wanted to beat that and play, Virtue's Last Reward sometime, or maybe even just watch an LP of it or something. But I just, haven't.
Yeah, they're both pretty good games. Just, I'm not sure that playing them adds anything over the experience of just reading the LPs.
Yeah, that is probably fair enough. They seemed, 999 seemed fairly, visual novel-ish from, what little I played of it.
Yeah, I mean, it is a visual novel. The only gameplay you've got is in the escape sequences. And the biggest problem with that is, at least in 999, they make you replay the escapes so many times. I mean, who wants to play a game where you just do the same thing over and over and over? And I think you're getting the joke.
Yeah.
We're halfway through. Unfortunately, we get to do something a little different after this part.
Alright. These, little...
Poukes.
goblin-like things? Yeah.
They're Poukes.
Poukes.
I'm not even bothering to target them anymore, because this attack has such a wide range, it's hitting everything anyway.
Yeah, I was gonna, like, say that they're just, like, kind of piling on you like Pikmin or whatever.
Yeah, this is the room that you come to if you just need to defeat a large number of folks, and it doesn't matter which kind they are. Because, like I said, there's an endless number of Poukes in this room. And by the time they're done, you've unlocked whatever karmas you needed.
So do different folks have different requirements for upgrading their karmas?
Yep. They're unique for every folk.
Okay.
But they basically fall into 3 categories. Either use a certain number of a certain type of item, which you pick up by defeating the folk that happens to drop it, or capture more of whatever folk it is, which for some folks that can be a real pain because they're tough to fight. Or defeating either a specific folk or just a large number of anything.
So would you say that kind of system is better or worse than just flat out regular grind? Just, have to kill as many creatures as you can until you, say, level up or something.
Well, this game does have an experience system.
Okay, it does. So that works.
It just doesn't do quite as much, I think, as the normal folk grinding.
Okay.
Because the folk grinding, you're building up the powers of the individual folks when you use them to attack. The experience, I think, just builds up your hit points.
Okay.
And possibly makes capturing some of the tougher folks easier. But I've never really experimented with that to find out. It just seems like I capture them faster.
Alright.
I think we're almost done here. Kill all these guys with Answerer, and I should be pretty close to unlocking its next karma.
So the next one you said is the one that gets it more hits then, or was it the last one?
I've already done that one.
Okay.
And now I'm going for either increased attack power or reduced consumption of magic capacity. That's the blue bar, and that determines how much you can use the attacks. If I use it too much, the bar empties, and then I gotta wait for it to refill.
Alright.
It's not usually much of a problem, particularly with the kinds of attacks that I'm using. They're all pretty cheap.
Okay. So, are these areas in the game, like, specific grinding areas, or are they just areas you have them before that you're using for grind?
Well, this is the area that you go to in the first chapter.
Ah, okay.
And from here we'll be going back to the area from the current chapter, chapter 4.
And you meant...
Yeah, I can skip most of the other realms just because we don't have any specific requirements from them in this chapter. They made Keats a lot easier to build up than Ellen. I have no idea how long Ellen's karmas are going to take to build up, but it's going to be a while. Oh, I have to defeat one Barghest. I find that later in this chapter. So it's pretty convenient that I happen to be in the fairy realm right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed, like, some of these names, like Barghest, seem familiar. Like, I've heard of them, like, from whatever mythology that they came from, but I don't actually know much on that.
Well, what a funny coincidence, because my usual commentator, who just didn't have time in his schedule for this video, has been telling me all those legends. So you can go back and catch up with the LP and learn all that stuff.
Alright, that sounds cool.
Yeah. Thrumpin is probably the most annoying folk to build up for Keats, because first I have to absorb it, which you have to do in the Endless Corridor. Then I have to kill a bunch of Kilmulas, which means I gotta leave the Endless Corridor and come here. And then I've got to capture a bunch more of it, which means back to the Endless Corridor.
That sounds like a lot of running.
Well, fortunately, I had already captured as much of it as I needed before I came here, so it just kind of goes with the order in which I'm doing things. And Barghest, as we all know, is weak to fire. But when I fought him as Ellen, we also discovered that he's weak to the slash element. So there we go, that's Answerer's final karma. Extra attack power. I forgot that it was its final karma. So I believe that's everything that I need from the Fairy Realm. It's time to leave and head back to Endless Corridor. Which I sped up because one of the main annoying things about this level is that it's a maze.
Ah, that's fun.
And you have to go into the dead ends to find enemies like Spriggan. Which randomly appears in the dead ends sometimes and randomly doesn't.
That sounds kind of annoying.
Yeah, so I've got to defeat 3 Spriggan with Ogma, I think. I might have already beaten one, and I've got to capture a bunch more of them. Which, as you can see, is quite an ordeal.
So, what are you doing for the capturing anyway? Do you have to just hammer a button or something?
Well, you hold a button to grasp the id with your psychic power tendril, whatever. They never really go into a lot of detail about exactly what that is, other than that's the power to capture Folks. And then it's motion controls.
Oh, okay.
So most of the captures, you just jerk the controller upwards and you pull it in. But this one is a little more complicated. You gotta use the stop and go method, as they call it. So when the id goes orange and starts moving around, you shake the controller like crazy. And when it stops, you have to stop, or else its bar will build back up. And they honestly do this just to annoy you.
Ah, okay.
But I think that's the last Spriggan, so I went back to normal speed. And Spriggan is a shield, so the only karmas it has are reducing the amount of MC that it takes up. Then I've got plenty of yellow dust and plenty of golden ore, so it's all done. I want to show everybody just how cheap it is. Still kind of expensive, but it's also the most effective shield in the game. Shame I don't use shields all that much.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen you use any during this so far.
Yeah, Spriggan particularly, you just want to dodge its attacks, because after it attacks is the only chance you have to hit it. And then a lot of times I just forget that I have shields. So now I'm getting confused, because every time you go into a dead end, you return to the original entrance of the room, not the door that you went through to get to the dead end. So I think at some point I found a room that didn't have a Spriggan in it, and decided to go to a different one. And I couldn't find a dead end. Yeah, there was a shield.
Seems to be a bit... So this was the Endless Corridor then?
Yep.
Seems to be a big kind of a clock theme going on here, since you've got like the clock-based enemies running around, and then this kind of clock-ticking ambient noise.
Yep. It's a clock-themed area, definitely. And I'm not sure if that's supposed to represent the time that runs out for all of us, or just the fact that at the end of the Endless Corridor you fight the folk that controls time.
Controlling time sounds like a pretty good answer.
Yep, just going through my list to make sure that there are no other karmas that I can unlock at this point. But all of them involve folks that we can't find yet in the game. We got Fumoir, Gladiolus, Colbinau. Gotta capture 10 more Thrumpin, and I think that's everything that I can do at this point. I think the other interesting thing about the Endless Corridor is that it seems to be a giant library. Got a lot of books everywhere.
Yeah, I'd noticed that when you're running around and they had the big walls just full of books.
Yeah, probably again a reflection of modern thought. I don't even remember how many Thrumpin there are in this room, but I'm pretty sure it's at least 10. Oh yeah, that's right. We got the downloaded quest folk, Maximilian. I think I have to defeat a certain number of Answerer with it. Which is hard because you have to charge it up and it's got this giant explosion.
Yeah, like I can see that, like, compared to the earlier areas, these guys seem to be actually getting some good hits in on you.
Yeah, it's about the only real difficulty curve the game has. I don't know that they necessarily make the folks harder to fight so much as they do a little more damage and there are more of them. So here's me trying to charge up Maximilian and getting hit before it goes off, which is the biggest problem with Maximilian. I don't really use it all that much except to build up its karmas. And I want to capture those Thrumpin and not capture the Answerer, because I want to kill it. I think Answerer is just highly resistant to the destroy element.
But you have to kill it with that one to specifically get that karma then?
Yep, that's the folk that's got to land the final attack. All the other attacks can be whatever. Okay. And this is the point at which I discovered that when you hit these exploding crystals, it actually does damage to you.
Oh, that's not good.
I wasn't really watching my hit points, and they're decreasing significantly. But I don't think that can actually kill you, because I'm left with 1 hit point. So I decided to hike all the way back to the beginning of the area and go to the save portal to recharge. Pulled up my status screen to show, yep, that's exactly 1 hit point I have left. Yeah, in future videos I'll definitely be watching for those explosions and trying to smash those crystals from a distance. But I cut out killing a number of Answerers, so you can just kind of imagine that my activities in this room I repeated 3 more times off camera. I do think Barrager is pretty effective on Answerers, though. Because there's so many times, like while they're sweeping their arms, and they got that shield up, that they're completely immune to damage. Barrager, you've just got this constant stream of bullets that once they're no longer immune, they'll take the damage. And this should be about it.
So when they turn red, they just don't get back up, essentially?
Well, they're stunned for a while.
Okay.
If you don't kill them quickly enough, then they'll recover. And I think they get a bunch of HP back, too. But if you hit them too many times, even without the red id popping up, they'll die eventually. So some folks are tricky to capture just because they'll die before their red id pops out half the time.
Ah, that would be not good.
But anyway, that's pretty much everything that I needed to do here. All the karmas that can be built up at this point have been built up. And I'll see you guys next time for the Folklore video.
Yep, thanks for having me.